Content warning. This episode contains standard Magic the Gathering metagame talk. If you don't like standard, well, go play Commander and stop listening to that. No, I'm just kidding. You should check it out. High Tide with Kai, an Inked Gaming and Cracking Cards podcast. Let's go. Hello and welcome to High Tide with Kai. I am your host, Mitch, and today we have kind of a unique episode. It's going to be a solo cast by me, and we are going to be going over the new standard metagame in Magic the Gathering. So, to give you a bit of a background on my story, I played Magic, competitive Magic, growing up from the age of maybe like 12. I started going to FNMs, and I did not win a match for the first, I think, 2 months I played FNMs. My first ever tournament, I showed up because it said Friday Night Magic standard, and I showed up and I just was like, hey, I don't have a standard deck. What can I do? And the store owner sold me a sealed deck. 5-color sealed deck. They used to come in deck boxes, and it was I think 5 lands a piece and then 60 cards total, so it was 25 land, 35 cards. I proceeded to obviously lose 0-2 every round. My first ever tournament round, I believe, was against Vile Goblins, so that dates me a little bit, but that you can kind of get the idea. Vile Goblins versus sealed deck was not a good experience. But over those first 2 months, I learned a lot, and I learned that Disciple of the Vault was a very good card early on, and so I built a burn deck that revolved around. It was used all the burn spells and Disciple of the Vault in the format, and so I just tried to kill artifact creatures. But anyway, today we're going to be going over the standard metagame. So I played Magic the Gathering competitively from about 11 or 12 till 18, and then I took a hiatus until I was about 22, 23, and then I started really playing in a lot of tournaments from 22, 23 all the way up until 27, 28. I played a lot of Magic Online. I would do, multiple dailies a day, multiple 8-mans a day, and so that's kind of my history. I went to many GPs, had some success, but overall, I just love tournament play and I love competing, and that's what always brings me back to the game. So when I'm at my, I think on the last episode, when I am the most passionate about Magic the Gathering is when I have a tournament to prepare for, a paper tournament, because I just love hanging out with people at the live tournament venues and stuff. So what brought me back to online Magic recently was that on October 12th, which as of recording this, that was 7 days ago, there was a ban update. And the ban update, in Standard specifically, banned Omnath Locus of Creation, Lucky Clover, and Escape to the Wilds. And a lot of people that I've talked to, we all know that Standard wasn't in the healthiest format for the last couple of years. And so even though I love Magic so much, there were many times where I would try to play. It just didn't feel like Magic as I, learned to love growing up. There was something missing. I think one thing that really makes Magic great is a format of Magic great is when there are aggro decks, midrange decks, control decks, and combo decks all cobbled together in one format that are equally balanced. And that is a piece of art that is very hard to achieve. So Wizards R&D has been making these formats playable and enjoyable for decades now. And when you have pressure to make cooler and more interesting cards for the commander side, you're going to run into some issues with balance. But I think the bannings did really well for the game, and so I heard that the format was a little bit underpowered, so I decided to try it out. And so today I'm just going to go over my experiences with this new standard format, and I hope that you'll learn a little bit about the standard format and maybe give it a try again if you're one of the people that has decided to take a little bit of break from standard Magic. So the first deck I tried when I logged back into Magic Arena was Mono Red Aggro. Mono Red Aggro has been a popular deck for, it feels like, I don't know, it feels like maybe, I know in the Amonkhet era it was really good. I can't remember before, yeah, Khan's era it was good. It's been good for like 5 years, it feels like. And it doesn't ever feel like it fully falls off. There have been a couple eras where it was really gimmicky. Specifically the Siege Rhino days of like the 4-color Siege Rhino decks. I don't think it was that powerful during that. Maybe no, actually there was a deck. There was a deck back then. But it's had its performances over the years, and I feel like Wizards always wants Mono Red to be an accessible deck and a nice deck for people to learn with, and also a lot of these Mono Red decks have a really high skill cap too. So I started out with Mono Red just to kind of get a feel from the format, and it was a lot of fun. So you start out with your Ember Cleave. You get 4 Ember Cleave. You have a bunch of 1-drops, a bunch of 2-drops, and you kind of just go from there. But I've played Mono Red so much that I just kind of felt like I was going through the motions again, and I wanted to relearn my love of Magic and my love of Standard with a deck that really spoke to me, and that was the Black-Red Midrange deck that is currently doing pretty decently well in Standard. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of go down my list that I'm playing on Arena, and this by no means is a list that you should copy card for card, but it is a list that I took from MTG Goldfish. You'd be sure to check out MTG Goldfish if you're looking for some really nice deck lists and a lot of really well organized format breakdowns and stuff. But so I took a random list, just copy and pasted it into Arena, started playing games, and just kind of tuned it from there. So this is basically just a conglomeration of, it isn't by no means my deck or anything. It's a conglomeration of what strategies I've seen on Arena and Magic Goldfish, and then kind of my, I added a little bit of random, like I added one more land. I cut some of the biggest thing was the mana base was that I changed, but we'll go over that. So I'm just going to go down the list, kind of tell you the matchups that I've experienced so far, and basically we'll call that the podcast. I just wanted to, I had a lot of fun this last weekend playing Standard, and I know there have been many, many times where I've wanted to write an article or something about playing Magic Arena for inkedgaming.com, and the passion just wasn't there. And the passion is, it feels like it's kind of creeping back. This format feels fun and balanced, and like you're playing bad cards. When you're playing bad cards, when every deck is playing bad cards, then you know that the Standard format is balanced. I always think back to Heliod's Pilgrim. That was one of my favorite cards in Arena. Heliod's Pilgrim, go get chained to the rocks, which is just a silly, if you think about it, just a silly way to win a game. But when everybody's playing like somewhat underpowered cards, it feels like the format is more diverse and people have more fun and people can experiment a little bit more. All right, so Black-Red Midrange. So the start of it is 16 creatures. So we start off the top with arguably the most important card in the deck, Kroxa, Titan of Death's Hunger. So that is a 2-drop. When it enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless it escaped. It's like Uro's legendary creature Elder Giant friend that is not powerful enough to get banned. So when it enters the battlefield or attacks, each opponent discards a card. Then each opponent who didn't discard a non-land card this way loses 3 life. So the reason Crocs is in this deck is that anytime you're playing a mid-range deck with recursion from the graveyard, you're just trying to 1-for-1 your opponent and then finish the game with your value engines, and Croxa is your value engine. Many times you'll, if you trade 1-for-1 effectively and then you slam a Croxa down and you are on the play, your opponent is discarding their last card in their hand and you now have a 6/6. And it's just super powerful when you're playing again. There's a lot of mill decks in Standard actually right now. So they'll actually mill your Croxa and enough gas for you to escape it the next turn. It's just the threat of your opponent milling a Croxa is pretty big, and a lot of times they can kind of dig their own grave, so to speak, just by you having this card and it's castable in your deck. So that I love playing with Croxa. It's been a lot of fun. Just like, I don't know, just mid-range in general is a lot of fun for me in underpowered formats, and I think Croxa is one of the places to be right now. Next, for Magmatic Chandler. Some of the lists are playing this card, some of the lists are not playing this card. Since this deck's only playing 16 spells, a lot of the time you're not going to have Magmatic Chandler turned on, but it's still a 1/3. It can still block a lot of the rogues and a lot of the red creatures, the mono red aggro creatures. So I think, and then its ability is why you play it. Discard a card, exile the top 2 cards of your library, then choose one of them. You may play this card this turn. So a lot of times you can discard something like a removal spell that you're not using, or a land, and then you can turn those resources into something that's more important. The next card is, I'm playing 2 of Skyclave Shade. Skyclave Shade is a 2-drop 3/1 that can't block, that can kicker, and then whenever it has a landfall, you can whenever you landfall for a turn, you can bring it back from your graveyard you can cast it from your graveyard. It's a value piece. It's very good to discard to Magmatic Chandler, and when you play it on turn 2 against a lot of decks, they don't want to actually 1-for-1 removal it, and then you're hitting them for 3 every turn. It fits really well in this deck, I feel. It's a flex slot for sure. I'm not playing 4 because I tried 4 and it was a little too much, but overall it's performed better than I expected it, so I'm keeping it in for now. Next, for Bonecrusher Giant. Bonecrusher Giant, some decks are playing 3, some are playing 4. I'm playing 4 because where I'm at on ladder, I just reached gold. Where you're at on ladder, you play against a lot of mono red. I restarting Magic Arena both in bronze leagues, so there might be a world where I'll be shaving a Bonecrusher Giant later down the line, but not right now. I feel like it's too good of a card to shave. I'm playing a 1 of Murderous Rider. Some people are playing 0, some people are playing 2. It just feels like it's my 5th Heartless Act, I guess. I don't like it in the deck, but sometimes you need that extra removal spell. I think that's one of the cards that I could see cutting. I'm playing a 1 of Terror of the Peaks. Some decks are playing 2, some decks are playing 0. It has won me games if I can untap with it. I don't think you ever want to draw more than 1, ever. And I don't think it is integral to winning the match, drawing this. So having it as a random 1 of that you can slam down on 5 every once in a while is fine, I think. I think it's also a replaceable card. On to Planeswalkers. We're playing 2 Planeswalkers, and they are both Liliana, Walker of the Dead. Liliana, Walker of the Dead has obvious parallels to the 3-drop Liliana that is a modern staple in Jund and other black-green variants. So the +1 is each player discards a card. It's -3 is, basically a kill spell. I like it because you can play a 2-drop into it. Like, you can go removal, Liliana, or like removal on 1, removal on 2, removal on 3, Liliana, removal. Like, basically against mono red, it's your finisher removal, and then it locks out the game very quickly and gets those Embercleaves out of your opponent's hand. I have never ulted it, and I don't think you need to in this deck, but it's a very efficient 4-drop, and I think it deserves to be a 2-of in this deck. It's another card that you could sideboard out. Onto Bloodchief's, or onto spells, we have 4 of Bloodchief's Thirst. Some people are playing 2 or 3. I am playing 4. Same, the similar thing for the mono red matchup. I think it's the best card in the mono red matchup, so it's good to play 4. Spikefield Hazard, I'm playing a 2 of. That is the one that can be a land or a basically just one damage to any target. It also exiles a permanent, which is important in a couple of matchups. I love this card. It is these land spell things are so versatile. I did not think it would be as impressive as it has been, but it has been very, very good. 2 of those. Onto 2 Agonizing Remorse. That is the 2-mana sorcery. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it or a card from their graveyard. Exile that card. You lose 1 life. This card has been another overperformer. I will say that it has been the best in the Rogues deck when you're playing against Lurrus. So what will happen is, what I do against the Lurrus deck is I sandbag my Agonizing Remorse until they pay the 3 to bring Lurrus into their hand, and then I remorse it out of the game. And that really helps that matchup. I could see playing, the other 2 in the sideboard. I think it's obviously a slow Thoughtseize, but it being able to hit your opponent's graveyard is also good in the mirror to get their Kroxa, and has a lot of, even hitting, an Embercleave every once in a while is great. And then on to 4 Heartless Act. I think that's probably the best spell in this deck. And I see some people playing 3, but I'm perfectly fine playing 4, especially when I'm playing Magmatic Chandler to be able to discard it in the control matchups. Then I'm playing 2 Shatterskull Smashing. That is the Mythic X Mountain sorcery that you can either play as a land, or it can deal X damage divided. Another it's just like Spikefield Hazard. It's a little bit overcosted, but the versatility makes it worth the slot. I'm playing 2 Hagra Mauling, basically same exact thing. Destroy target creature for 4, or it's a land. Then I'm playing some enchantments. Playing 4 of Timurit Calls the Dead. That card, I would say, is top 3 important cards in the deck because you're playing Kroxa. It being able to mill 6 is very, very powerful. A lot of times you mill a Kroxa and make a zombie. Sometimes you just mill 3 to fuel your Kroxa. And then the last non-land card is 1 of Elspeth's Nightmare. That is another flex slot. I love it because it's good against aggro and it's decent against control, and then it also exiles your opponent's graveyard. It's great in the mirror if you can hit a Chandler, a Magmatic Chandler, take one of their spells, and then exile their Kroxa out of their graveyard. Like it does everything in the mirror. My sideboard, just going to go down it real quick. 2 Duress, 3 Soul Guide Lantern, 1 Mazebind Tome, 3 Scorching Dragonfire, 1 Elspeth's Nightmare, 3 Extinction Event, and 2 Ox of Agonis. That is a copy-paste sideboard, so I'm not going to even pretend to try to analyze it. I think you, the listener, would be perfectly fine to be able to look that over and play. When you play this deck, you can make your changes. So for our lands, we're playing 2 Castle Locthwain. That card it's good, but we utilize our mana a lot in this deck, so it's not completely necessary. I think I've activated it twice in my climb from bronze to gold. 4 Fabled Passage, just amazing card. 4 Mountain, 7 Swamp, 4 Temple of Malice. I am playing more untapped basics, and I am playing 1 extra land because I'm playing Magmatic Chandler. I one of the biggest things I noticed was that this deck played a lot of tapped lands early on. And so it was kind of messing up my sequencing, especially when you have Spikefield Hazard, Shadow Skull Smashing, and Hagra Mauling. I cut down on some of the tapped non-basic lands for a couple more, like a mountain and a swamp or something. And I think the land count's been pretty good for me overall. So when you play this deck on ladder, it's always very important to be mindful of what lands you're playing, in what order. There is double black and double red, and there are turns where you're going to need to Kroxa plus play a red spell or Kroxa plus play a black spell. And a lot of times, if you didn't sequence in the first few turns, it will bite you in the rear. So that's the overview of the deck. And now I'm going to actually go through the metagame. So let's bring up the standard metagame on MTG Goldfish. So right now, Dimir Control is at a 16.8% of the meta. Rakdos Midrange is at 9.5. Golgari Adventures 8.8. Azorius Blink 7.9. Mono Red Aggro 7.5. And then you have Gruul Adventures, Mono Green Aggro, Mono Green Food, Esper Doomfortold, and then Red Green Ramp, Dimir Rogues, and Mono White Aggro. So when you look at a metagame like this and you see 16, 9, 8, 7, 7, 6, 5, 5, like the metagame is very diverse and pretty nice right now. So off the top, Dimir Control matchup isn't the greatest for you. In a best for 3, it's a lot better. If you're looking to play a best of 1, you have a lot of removal spells that kind of get blanked in game 1. But the nice thing is that most Dimir quote-unquote control decks are playing a rogue package. So they're playing Thieves Guild Enforcer, Soaring Thought Thief, Ruin Crab, and Merfolk Windrobber. So all of your removal spells are still turned on. A lot of times, though, their game plan, the way they kill is eventually those things, but their game plan revolves more around killing your creatures and drawing tons of cards with cards like Into the Story. Excuse me. And so, yeah, I would say in my experience playing best of 1 and best of 3, it's been about a 50-50 matchup. I would say best of 1, Dimir Control is a little bit more favored. The nice thing is that they're milling you, and so you have Kroxa to be able to wrap up the game. So if they draw a couple extra too many lands, or they mulligan once or something, the matchup goes from them being slightly favored to you probably being heavily favored. Golgari Adventures, I think Golgari Adventures is... it will show that it will be one of the better decks in the format for the longest period of time because of its just versatility still, and it also plays cards like Scavenging Ooze, which are just great right now. I do think that they'd probably go up to more Scavenging Ooze as time goes on because it's pretty good in a lot of matchups, and a lot of graveyards are very, very full right now. Azorius Blink is the next matchup. I feel like I have not played this matchup very much, but I think I've lost it both times I've played it. I would need to, have more sample size to know what the matchup percentages are, but I don't feel like you're heavily favored in that matchup. They just have a lot of big, heavy hitters. Mono Red Aggro is a matchup I feel like we're pretty favored, especially the build that I'm playing right now. I play against Mono Red Aggro probably every third game, and if your removal lines up, it's pretty much game over because you can do that, play like a 1/3, and generate enough card advantage to just take it over the top. Gruul Adventures and Mono Green Aggro are similar. So is Golgari Adventures. All three of those decks are pretty similar. Mono Green Aggro tries to go a lot lower to the ground and tries to just beat you down with Lovestruck Beasts. Gruul Adventures can grind, and Golgari Adventures can grind too. But But all three of those decks, I feel like Rakdos Midrange just has a 50% matchup in most of these matches right now, and it is a really fun deck to get to learn the format with, and the sequencing, you get very, very rewarded when you like. The funny thing, when I started playing this deck, I lost like the first 5 games, I think, in bronze, and I was like, maybe I just don't know how to play anymore. I haven't played for 5 or 6 months, and then I started realizing that I was just sequencing so poorly because I did not have the knowledge of what my opponent could play the next turn, because I hadn't even really looked at most of the other decks and what their curves were and stuff. So a lot of playing the Rakdos Midrange deck is anticipating what your opponent is doing the following turn and on your own instep. So, do you need to leave your Bonecrusher Giant open, or can you afford to play the tapped land, for instance? They're going to be flashing in a 1/3, so your Bonecrusher Giant can't kill it anyways, so you're going to play the tapped land. Just things like that. Other than that, I think we did a pretty good overview about the black-green midrange deck. I will say that this deck is by far the most fun I've had in Standard in probably years. I know it's only been 4 days of playing this deck or something, but a lot of my previous forays into Standard, I just played it because I wanted to compete. And this deck is making me want to come home and play Magic again, which I haven't felt that want to do in a very long time. And, if you listen to this and it kind of got you excited about Standard, I hope that you'll re-download Magic Arena and give it another try. And maybe even add me. You can email me at mitch@inkedgaming.com, and we can hook up on Magic Arena and maybe chat a little bit. So if you liked this deck review and kind of overview on the Magic Arena metagame right now, even though it's, I'm obviously going from bronze to gold, in this one, I'll probably be providing an update after playing this deck a little bit more. But if you like this, feel free to subscribe, and we'll catch you all next time on High Tide with Kai. Thank you for listening to High Tide with Kai, an Inked Gaming and Kraken Cards podcast. Be sure to head to inkedgaming.com for all your gaming accessory needs. inkedgaming.com.